Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In Cutoff Genes.
Welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I am a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer, co-host, jingle writer. That's about it.
That's all.
Of this podcast. And proud to be all of those things with you here, Julie. How are you?
I'm good, friend. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You call me friend.
You're my friend.
You've got a friend.
Yeah, just call out my name.
Hey, you know what?
What?
We've hit another milestone here on this podcast.
60!
Yeah, not just number 60. But you know you've made it when you've got a hater.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
We've got a troll, Julie, our first troll. I want to cry.
iTunes.
It's so nice that we have made it that big.
It means we've made it.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Exactly.
You know, it's like when people start saying snarky things about you, you're like, oh, people are listening.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know, even though I have a feeling that it's somebody who actually didn't listen to the podcast.
Okay, it's either someone who hasn't listened.
It felt almost like a bot. You know, like the way, well, I guess we should explain what it was. We got a review on one of the sites that was very non-specific about our podcast in general.
The title sounded like it was going to be very specific, but then it didn't mention any of those two crazy things in the first place.
Anyway, I just felt kind of out of left field, and I thought, did this person even listen to the podcast? So I wondered if it was just, again, a troll.
Yeah.
And then when you've got a troll, you've made it. So congratulations.
Apparently so. Thank you. Yeah, you know, I'm all for constructive criticism, and if whatever they said was legit, something like if they said we talk too much or we laugh too much or we're off sub, you know, that's legit. Yeah. Fine, don't listen. But
don't talk too much on a podcast.
Well, off topic, I should say. And talk about musicals too much.
Well, you know.
But what they were saying wasn't even.
Yeah.
Something. I mean, we could be accused of doing that. It could be something that we could do, but we definitely don't.
Yeah. Well, you know, whatever. We have to have thick skins now that we're out in public, Julie.
Dude, why do you think I've gained so much weight?
You look great. Are you kidding me?
My skin is, well, it's menopause.
Oh. You give men a pause.
Thank you. They're men are giving themselves a pause.
You hit
waka waka.
Waka waka. Oh my God, enough. Now we're going to get some haters. They were making jokes about menopause.
I can make a joke about something that is about me, I think.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
I make a lot of jokes about you.
Indeed. Too many.
I feel like,
I've been meaning to talk to you about that.
Well, you know what it is, Julie? I think it's funny. Like, women go through menopause, but I mean, we're very close to the same age.
Menopause.
And I think there is a thing. I mean, they call it midlife crisis with men. But I mean,
yours is not physical.
No.
See, this is a physical thing that I've thought for many years, I must be perimenopausal, but this summer, all of a sudden I'm like, this is menopause.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's an absolute, you change. You feel like a different person sometimes.
That's so funny because I just last night caught an old episode of All in the Family where Edith goes through the change, and it's really funny. And it was kind of daring at the time for them to even talk about it. You know, and she's such a great. Well, Gene Stapleton was so great.
Come on.
And at the end of the episode, you know, Archie's going nuts because Edith is so emotional and, you know, off the rails that he says, "All right, Edith, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. You're going to go through the change now. Change."
Oh, bless his heart.
It was such a good show, folks.
Oh, it was so good. You know, I was watching, I think the 70s or something on CNN the other day, which is a retrospective TV in the 70s.
Right.
And it was talking about All in the Family and
Yes.
Norman Lear. And do you realize that All in the Family is the first TV show to ever feature a toilet flush?
Really?
Like you can hear a toilet flush, and that was apparently scandalous.
Isn't that funny?
That's crazy.
But you know, at the same time, there's things when I catch an old episode of that show, it's shocking because the things they talk about, they still don't talk about on television, or maybe it's
it was
just
groundbreaking.
It really was,
right. And then of course people criticized it because they thought it was glorifying it, but what it was doing was shining a light.
You know
on
what
it.
though? If anyone watched that and thought that, they were just completely tone deaf. Because if you watch the show, you really know what they're doing.
There are a lot of tone deaf people, my friend,
including our troll.
Maybe he's just deaf.
Anyway, what's going on in DNA, Julie?
Well, Richard, I'm going to start with a clarification corner.
Oh, I always like that.
Sure.
Yes.
This is from episode 57 when I was talking about my husband's grandmother's family, maternal grandmother's family that had a piano factory in New York.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
Yes,
and I
I
said
do.
that didn't they have a sheet music building?
Yeah, and you went to New York and you tried to find out which corner it was.
But
Yes.
then I was talking about the sheet music building. I'm not really sure how we got there. But that building was called the Brill Building, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
So the Brill Building is in what is known as Tin Pan Alley.
Yes.
Which is a collection of New York City music publishers and songwriters who dominated the popular music of the United States in the late 19th and early 20th century.
Did you see the musical Beautiful?
Of course I did.
Okay, so a lot
worked
of that.
in the Brill Building.
Carole King, yeah. I love that. I love that they kind of brought that to life, showing her like in one cubicle writing a song while Cynthia Weil was and
Yes.
Oh God, what was her husband's name?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, well, all these other songwriters were writing these famous hits. Well, became famous hits in the next room. You know.
Yeah, isn't
and
that cool?
They could hear them
and
through
even,
the wall.
You know, I did a musical called "I Love a Piano," which was the musical of Irving Berlin.
Yes.
Basically, music of Irving Berlin, and we featured a section of that, like that was supposed to be the Brill Building.
Okay.
About writing. Anywho. So it originally referred to this specific place at West 28th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues in the Flower District of Manhattan. There's a plaque on the sidewalk of 28th Street between Broadway and 6th Avenue that commemorates it.
I've seen that plaque. I didn't know that's what you were talking about which is why I'm glad you brought it up in this clarification corner.
Exactly. I've clarified it. Tin Pan Alley, the Brill Building, boom. I was curious about the origins of Tin Pan Alley because, I have to know these things. One account claims that it was a derogatory reference to the sound of many pianos, comparing them to the banging of tin pans. Other claim it arose from songwriters modifying their pianos to produce a more percussive sound. And after many years, the term came to refer to the U.S. music industry in general. Okay, so moving on. Last week or the week before, I talked about the New York lawmakers passing the adoption bill.
Big deal.
Yes. What I didn't realize was that it was passed at that point to be to go to the floor for the actual vote.
It hadn't actually been enacted
It had passed to go to the floor for the vote.
Okay.
There you go. And there was people were nervous about it because it's the end of the season or the session, and if they didn't get to it, they'd have to wait months before they could get it to the floor. There was a thing. So I actually watched it live.
Did you really?
Streaming. Yeah,
they streamed it, huh?
They streamed it, and it was very cool. I got so emotional sitting in my dining room watching my computer. It was very cool. I was concerned because I thought there was going to be, because of course the sponsor is the first person who gets up to explain what it is, and then somebody from the opposing side gets up and tells why they don't think it's a good idea. So of course the guy opposed to it gets up and talks about privacy of birth parents and blah, blah, blah. And it was giving me anxiety hearing him say that because I'm like, I wonder how many of them agree with that. Because that's a concern.
Sure, yeah.
But then one by one, when the vote happened, people started getting up and explaining their vote, why they voted that way. And Pam Hunter, who is a New York Assembly member, gave such an amazing speech. She's an adoptee herself.
So it's personal.
Yes. And she explained why, what it's been like for her life. She still doesn't know who her biological people are. And at the end of her speech, she got a standing ovation on the floor.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And another thing that was very cool was another one of the members, Deborah Glick of Manhattan. In her floor speech, she talked about how times have changed. And this was especially heartening. She said she didn't initially support the legislation.
Really?
Yes, but she was talked out of it. When enough people from, who have experienced this spoke to her, she suddenly saw the reality behind it.
Imagine that. Imagine a politician actually changing their opinion based on evidence and other people talking to them and then saying, you know what, maybe I should rethink my...
That's nothing we see, is it?
It's amazing to me. That's to me is what a politician should be.
That's what it's supposed to be all
We're human
about.
beings, and the political is personal. I mean, every political decision affects somebody personally,
right?
Whether it's this or even taxes and trade and all that stuff, it affects somebody in a certain way. And I love the idea that somebody got up and said, you know what, I wasn't sure about this, or I thought this, but then I did not know this, and therefore...
And she's not the only one who said that, too. You judge people by the way they look at first before they open their mouths. And so I would see someone, I'd be like, oh, he's gonna, like if somebody was older, maybe they were, but everybody that spoke was for it.
Wow,
and
that's great.
It was so it ended up passing on a vote of 126-2.
Wow, that's huge.
So yeah, it's been since the 30s that 1935, that people have not been allowed to have their original birth certificates in the state of New York. And that was, interestingly enough, it was passed by Governor Lehman, who signed the law sealing birth certificates. He was an adoptive father. And he adopted his children from Georgia Tann.
Oh, yeah, who we featured on a podcast probably 20 episodes
who
ago.
stole babies and sold them.
Yes.
So thought that was interesting. They were kind of in cahoots with each other.
Wow.
Yeah. So congratulations, New York. 6 down. It's only 6 states. There are only 6 states where you have complete legal access to your birth certificate. There are some that are in the middle where you have access to it if one of the parents doesn't come forward to say, I don't want them to have access to it.
Oh, I see.
So that's flawed to me.
Yes.
That's still not fair.
What if the parents are gone?
They're gone?
Then okay.
Yeah, if they're gone or they didn't come forward, they usually give them a year. On those states, they usually give them a year to come forward. But then after that, it's... Okay,
I was going to say, because it shouldn't be something where you can... somebody's estate can say, oh, no, we don't want that, right?
Yeah, no.
No, yeah.
No.
It's the actual person and not, somebody's child that says, you know what, I don't want my mom's name dragged through that's old history or something,
Yeah. Gosh, yeah.
Just making sure.
Right.
Because I can foresee this.
Oh, believe me, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Lately, it's been a real mishmash of people saying nope and people saying absolutely.
Yeah.
Just when you're down and you think, oh my gosh, how are we going to get past this? Then something amazing happens.
But look at it was not a close vote at all. So that's
not
really
at all. But
heartening
it's taken
in a way.
years and years and years to even get it to the floor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard.
That's the hard part. Once it gets to the floor, I think most people are pretty open to it, considering the arguments are quite valid and
oh, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, again, what is anyone hiding anymore at this point? Everything. The truth is in our genes, and we can't hide it.
You simply can't hide. The point now is for everybody to be allowed to have their birth certificate and not be prevented from human rights.
God, I'm trying to remember if it was the New York Times, the Washington Post. There was some article online just recently, and I meant to send it to you, and I didn't. And it was called "The Death of the Family Secret."
Oh, I think I've read that.
Yeah, and I just thought, wow, if there's anything more valid or with what we're talking about on our podcast,
that's clickbait right there. I believe that was something that was written about the.
Well, I mean, I might have been, but whatever it was that I read a little bit more about it was the idea that because of DNA testing, all of these things that used to be, deep, dark secrets and skeletons in the closet are no more or cannot be anymore. And I thought, wow, we talk about that every week on this podcast, don't we? And every guest that we have on, they're all about secrets.
Right. Well, science answers everything.
Yeah.
It just does. And so science is truth is science.
Well, I have a few questions for science because he hasn't answered everything I want to know yet.
Oh, science. Why so silent, science? Silent science. Let's take a break and talk about that.
If you're enjoying Cutoff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
All right. It's time for listener question.
Oh, let's hear some listener questions.
Let's hear it. This one actually is from our friend Jenna Robertson, who finished her Epic Odyssey just last week.
Yes,
So-
I loved her four part. Yes.
Yeah. So she had a question, and I had to answer it right away because she was so lovely to talk to us. So Jenna is working on a difficult case right now that I've had in the past, and I feel her pain. She said, can you touch on traditions and rules for last names in Mexican culture? Is there a testing company Mexicans use more often than 23andMe or Ancestry? Okay, the second part of that, I don't know. I looked it up a little bit, and I think the best Mexican results you can get are Ancestry.
Because it's the largest company.
Because it's the largest and it's the most specific. They're getting more and more specific. They just upgraded again. And yeah, they're definitely more specific. I honestly don't know the answer to what company they use the most, but my guess is Mexican because it's on the continental United States.
And again, it's funny when you deal with other cultures and like naming, traditions and things. I can imagine that would be very confusing when you're trying to.
Super confusing, and this one especially, and you'll know why when I describe it. And I am just there's. This is in general. This is Mexican. Most Latin American or Latin countries have a similar tradition. You can you can Google it and see what the differences are within each country.
Okay.
If there are differences, but I'm just going to do the real basics here.
Okay.
If we're specifically in California, we're dealing with a lot of Mexican.
Well, I remember when I was in college and I was reading some Russian plays and Russian literature, and it was so hard to realize like what character they were talking about because depending on the relationship to the person, they used a different name. So your father would call you a certain name, but a friend would call you a different name, or it was like a nickname, but it was you had to know those conventions. And I was like, how many characters are there? But no, like some characters have 3 or 4 names.
You need to have like a key so that you can like go, wait, who's this? And
it was so confusing because it's not something we do here.
This is similar. Is similar.
Okay.
So here is the typical Mexican family's naming function. A last name is an apellido, which is mentioned many times in this article. But I changed it after I said apellido. Now I'm changing everything to surname. Apellido is surname. And okay. It's not complicated, however, it's very different from the system that we use in the United States.
Okay.
So, and it doesn't, most Mexican families that live in the United States don't do that anymore, at least publicly. They may within their family, but they go by the usual American traditions. Okay, here we go. Let's go with somebody named Ivan, spelled Ivan, pronounced Ivan, Miguel Rosado Rivas. So, Ivan Miguel are 2 first names.
Yes.
Very similar to our first and second middle name, but the second one isn't considered a middle name, it's considered first name, a second first name.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Like Mary Lou.
Sure,
right?
Yes. And his son, Ivan Rosado Mendez, only has 1 first name.
Okay.
Notice he has a different last name.
Yes.
So those individuals who have 2 first names sometimes use one or the other, and sometimes both. For instance, Ivan Miguel Rosado Rivas may be called Ivan, may be called Miguel, or Ivan Miguel by his family and friends.
Okay.
All right. In addition to the first names, a person is given 2 surnames. This is where it gets really complicated.
I'm already confused.
Yes. 2 surnames. Rosado Rivas, the father, and Rosado Mendez is the son, respectively. As we already noticed. The first of the 2 surnames is the father's first surname.
All right.
And the second of the 2 surnames is the mother's first surname.
I like that he takes the mother's name as well.
I do too.
Because usually that gets completely lost in American culture when a woman takes her husband's last name, unless she does a hyphenate, which is much more common now.
Right, which is what I do.
Miss Dixon Jackson.
Right, I don't hyphenate it though. I say that Dixon's my middle name, but I use Julie Dixon Jackson.
Yeah.
I could have hyphenated.
Oh, it doesn't matter. The hyphen doesn't matter. It's the fact that you're using both of the names. So, okay, I'm sorry. But we digress.
We digress. All right. So therefore, Ivan Rosado Mendez inherited the surname Rosado from his father, Ivan Miguel Rosado Rivas, and the surname Mendez from his mother, Rosa Eugenia Mendez Valles. Oh, so Mendez was her first last name, which was probably her mother's last name.
Okay.
I think.
How many generations back do you need to go? Do you start saying your 5 last names?
That's a good question. This naming system allows the father's surname to exist for at least 2 generations if it is passed through a daughter. So at least 2 generations. Or indefinitely if passed through successive sons. One other important aspect of the Mexican naming system is the way in which surnames are exchanged through marriage. Usually the wife will drop her second surname and replace it with her husband's first surname. Also, sometimes they will insert a "de" in front of the husband's first name before it replaces the wife's second surname.
Okay.
De meaning of.
Of, yes.
Right. So Hilda Rivas Aguilar, after marriage to her husband, Ivan Rosado Nunez, she can be known as Hilda Rivas Rosado or Hilda Rivas de Rosado. Hilda Rivas of Rosado, like yes. Eva Duarte de Perón.
Okay.
That's where I go with that.
Of course you do.
Because it's a musical. Right. So, does that somewhat make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, especially the part about of, because I remember in Hebrew, I believe, that you were named after somebody, and it goes and used the word Ben. Like I would be, if I was named after somebody, I would be like Richard Ben George, because my dad's name was George,
Ben.
like of George. Like
that's what Ben means.
Yes, Judah Ben Hurr. Remember from Ben Hurr?
Oh my God, I thought his first name was Ben.
No.
I seriously did.
No, it's a Hebrew thing.
Oh.
Yes, of. It's so I'm assuming, and I don't know, but I'm assuming that the Ben is equal to the de in Mexican culture in Spanish. You know?
I think every culture has that, even in the British, of.
Of. Yeah. You are so-and-so of somebody else.
Eleanor of Aquitaine.
Well, that
was the area.
I was just going to say, I'm not Richard Castle, of Los Angeles.
Wait a minute, Leonardo da Vinci was Leonardo of Vinci, the area of...
Well, maybe in certain cultures it's more about where you're from as opposed to the name of the person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody out there in listening land know this? Because I would love to know.
Tell us.
No, because it is interesting. When do you say you're of the place you were born or from?
Yeah.
Or of the family name that you came from?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So should we take a break?
Definitely. I need to think about my whole life now.
Let's digest this.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. That's me.
Story time.
Yes.
Yay, we have another international one today.
I'm still mourning the end of Jenna Robertson's, 4-parter.
Yeah, Jenna's fun, huh?
She's very sweet.
Jenna lingers. We just answered a question from her, and now we talk about her in story time.
We're going to morph into the Jenna Robertson podcast.
Jenna really made an impact, obviously.
So whose story are we hearing today?
So this is Emily Peace, who is one of our Aussie listeners, and she's one of our younger Aussie listeners, actually. She commented on the group when I said something about mainly older people like doing genealogy. She's like, not all of them.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I think I've been guilty of saying that here, too, that mostly that you're not interested in your family history until you're older.
I mean, traditionally, that is true.
Yes.
But not always. So Emily is an Aussie, and she has been on the hunt for her mother's biological parents.
I think I need to pause here and say that when you say Aussie, you mean someone from Australia, not someone who is a fan of Ozzy Osbourne. I'm just clarifying for the people who might be as stupid as I am
I think that goes unsaid. Were you really thinking that or just making a joke?
No, I was thinking if I heard you say Aussie, I may not. I mean, because it's you,
but
and I know you're
I'm Australian.
I know, but if I was just tuning into this and I heard someone say Aussie, I don't know that I would necessarily know.
Okay. Anyway, let's move on.
I need very specific instructions.
Australian, everyone. Okay, so Emily, here's the first part of Emily's interview, and we will see you on the other side. Hey guys, I am talking to my fellow Aussie, Emily Peace, from all the way in Sydney.
Hi, how are you?
You're waiting for me to keep talking.
I was like, do I come in here or?
Like we can't see each other for me to cue you. So Emily, where in Sydney are you?
I'm from just near the Blue Mountains, so I'm about 45 minutes out of the CBD of Sydney.
Okay. For the Americans, that is Central Business District. Americans don't know that.
Vacation.
So what town is that near the Blue Mountains?
Penrith.
Penrith. Oh, Penrith?
Penrith.
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 Oh, like Cornwall. Like in Cornwall.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I know my genealogy. Okay. So you have a fantastic story for us. So start wherever you'd like to start, and I will interrupt you only for clarifications or to say something snarky.
Awesome.
Okay.
Love it.
Go ahead.
All right. So my mum was adopted in Sydney in 1967 at about 5 weeks old. Mm-hmm. She didn't find out she was actually adopted until she was about 16 years old. She went to go for her driver's license, and my adoptive grandparents realised that on the birth certificate that they got, the location of her birth was very much so different to where she actually grew up. She grew up in country New South Wales, and on the post-adoption certificate, it actually stated that she was born in Sydney. So it was a 6-hour difference.
Okay.
They realised, oh goodness, she's going to realise that something's up with this. So they did tell her. She decided straight away that this is something she would like to investigate. She wanted to know who her family was. And my grandparents agreed to help her out.
Let's just go back. What was her reaction when she discovered that?
Shock.
I can only imagine.
Shock, but my mum's not the type to rebel or anything. Okay. I think her first instance, I think it was to feel really bad for her parents. I think, she didn't want to hurt them in any way.
Sure. By
being too upset.
Did they say why they had opted not to tell her?
No, they don't think so. And I've never really asked. I think back in the 60s, they were told not to tell.
Really?
They were just told not to tell. My mum's standing here shaking her head at me. What's going on, Mum?
They told me they didn't want to ruin the security.
They told Mum said. Okay, she's just informed me. I don't know if you heard that, but she said they didn't want to ruin the security. They ended up having 2 more children after Mum.
Okay.
Naturally, and so they just didn't want to. I'm looking at you, Mum. Fill in the blank here.
Yeah, they didn't want to ruin the security that we had.
Yeah. What do you mean by security? Can you be more specific?
I was just a member of the family. That's how it was.
They always say that Mum is theirs,
right?
And they just didn't want to ruin that dynamic, I think.
So the other 2 were not adopted?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That makes more sense. Okay.
And it's sort of, everyone, it's never really been a question. Mum's theirs. Mum's their daughter, and that's it.
Right.
So,
of course.
Yeah. Thanks, Mum. But so Mum went on a 14-year search for traditionally, in the traditional way, for her birth mother. It was just the security at that time with all of the documents, the legalities of it prevented a lot of information from being given out.
So when was this? So she was born in 1967 and she was, 16? So that was early 80s, I guess?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And so did the Adoption Act of 1983 come into play?
It did.
Okay, because that was me too.
Yeah. Okay. So they, Mum got her original birth certificate. When she was 19, she got the birth certificate.
Okay.
And from there, they sort of went on to investigate the mother's side. There was no father listed at all. Mm-hmm. They kept coming to dead ends. So what they realised was that an alias had been used by the birth mother. So they continued slugging along. Private investigator became involved, and they finally found her. They finally found the birth mother in what? In 1998.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I was around. I was 7 at that time.
Okay. So if she used an alias, how did they find her?
I think they went off.
Wait, you were going to say coerced. That's okay.
I think they utilized a combination of the location of this person, of birth mother, her birth date, and her occupation. Oh. So they sort of went off that, and they only came up with 1 or 2 options. They narrowed it down from there. So they really thought outside the square for that.
That's the way to do it. Good for them.
Yeah. And it turned out to be 100% correct. However, when they went to contact this lady, they realised that they got her husband instead, and we found out she had died in 1978. So she was only 30 years old.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. The kids won't ever forget that phone call. We were at home and Mum got the phone call, and she just absolutely, as you can imagine, fell apart. We didn't know what was going on because we didn't know Mum was adopted at that time.
Oh, wow. And so how did she die?
Heart attack.
What?
Yeah.
That's so young.
So young. So very interesting for us to know.
Yeah, good information.
So what we did realise was after she gave birth to Mum, she joined the Navy for a year and met her future husband there. They went on to have 3 more children who were all pretty okay with meeting Mum.
Oh, that's good.
We did it very slowly. The common consensus was that nobody seemed to know who Mum's father was. Okay. She never spoke about it at all. So
had they known about your mother, other than they didn't know who the father was, but had they known that their mother had given up a child?
The husband was told, and together I don't think Mum's biological mother ever wanted to give Mum up, to be quite honest. It just didn't work. It just couldn't be done at that time. So together they really wanted to find her and tried, according to the husband. He knew, the kids didn't know. He told his eldest daughter around the time that her children were born. We also found that Mum has aunts and uncles as well. They were all, or mostly, quite happy to meet us and chat with us. And I'm still in contact with most of them.
Oh, that's
so,
nice.
Yeah, it is nice. We actually found out that Mum's uncle lived in the same town. He was actually he was a security guard. Sadly, he's passed on. But he was doing security and patrolling the same area that my mum and dad were being married in. Around the church, the day my parents got married.
You're kidding! That is so great. I've talked about this on the show before. I feel like there's a very high possibility of you coming into contact with a relative and possibly dating them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like,
this is why we have to know.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, because I've thought about it, because I have, 1, 2, 3, I have 5 brothers who are all around the same age as me. And the 2 of them grew up 3 of them grew up not far from me at all. So it's a possibility. I mean, they would have been far too young for me, but still, I mean, they were close enough to where, I might have robbed the cradle. I don't know. I should stop talking about this now.
But no, you're completely right. This is the thing, completely 100% a thing.
Well, it's one of those things that you don't, it's like, it probably crossed everybody's mind, but nobody cared to make that a possibility. So,
yeah,
you know.
For sure. The bio mum's siblings, they had actually been told, we only recently found this out actually, is that they were told mum died. They knew that their sister was pregnant. She went away into one of the homes for unwed mothers, and upon giving birth, they were told, that she had died, so they wouldn't inquire any further.
Oh, so sad.
So that was a shock. Mum didn't know that, and I only recently found that out when I was questioning one of the aunts about what she knew in this section of the search. Yeah. So we sort of accepted that we'd never know who Mum's dad was at all, to be quite honest. There was no information on the birth certificate. We got the social worker's files. And we were only given a very, very generic physical description of him. Told he had brown hair, average build, hazel eyes, and he studied an arts degree at uni.
Oh, I know that guy.
Yeah. So it was a little bit,
Sure.
We're not going to know. And then I saw one of my friends on Facebook had taken a test with Ancestry in about 2016 and decided, okay, I'll look into this a bit further, and realised that that's actually a primary mode of finding family. So I decided to do the test first. I just wanted to see. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, and I still wasn't entirely sure of its usefulness.
Sure.
I spoke to Mum about it first. Just said, this is what I'm going to do. Do you mind? She's like, no, go for it. When I got my results back, Mum had already agreed by that point to take a test herself. We tested her, and I tested my sister as well. And that all happened around November, December 2016.
Okay.
It was insane just how overwhelming it was to start with, to be quite honest. I had no idea at all. When we got our matches back, I knew enough about the maternal side to be able to isolate those who were related on that side. I had that sort of mostly figured out.
Okay.
We actually, right out of the gate, had a fairly high match that did not match the maternal side at all.
How high?
Registered as a second cousin.
Oh, okay.
226 centimorgans.
Sure.
So I contacted her. We'll call her Laura. She got back to me. It took about 8 weeks for her to get back. But I decided straight off to be honest and upfront. I told her in the message that Mum was adopted and that we were looking for her father. You know, she responded quite well and was quite intrigued. Said straight away in her response that she'd talked to her mother, that her father had passed, and, she'd see what we could do. She got back straight away. Her mum said she was also interested. And essentially after a few emails back and forth, the mother agreed to actually meet Mum and I.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we went and met her. We went out to Hurr to have a chat.
How far away was she?
She was an hour out. Okay. We travelled to go visit. It was great, and we weren't at that stage sure if we were going to match her or Laura's father. So we'll call the mother Bridget. Bridget actually agreed to take a test within a month of meeting us.
Okay. Just
to double check. And she came back as a match to us, 336 centimorgans. I'd gotten in contact. I'd started writing a blog at that point, and I'd put out a request for information and any assistance. That's where my search angel sort of came to the rescue a little bit and started to help me with my mirror tree.
Was that Rose?
Yes, it was.
Yay, Rose Overberg.
Lovely lady.
Rose was my search angel from Melbourne that pointed me in the right direction. And thanks to Rose, we did it in a few days. And now, Rose started it all off for me.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know where I'd be without her. She really helped get everything going.
Yeah.
So thank you, Rose, if you're listening. So she began putting together this mirror tree based on, we started with Laura as the home person. So we knew that it was on Bridget's side of the family, Laura's mother, Bridget. So they actually sent us a very detailed family tree that included all of the recent generations, which is a great help because obviously not everything's available past a certain point. Bridget has to have been a first cousin once removed to us, to Mum. So we thought that, given that relationship, one of Bridget's male first cousins was going to be my mum's father.
Okay.
She has 6. So it was a case of, and look, I'm one of these people, once I need to know the answer to things. If I'm interested in it, that's it. I managed to eliminate 2 due to age. They were way too young at the time of Mum's conception. Mm-hmm. 1 wasn't actually in the right area at the time of Mum's conception, and there was no way he could have popped over to that area at that time.
Okay.
So just a little background on that. My biological grandmother was a nurse at a mental hospital in Sydney at the time of Mum's conception. So she was actually living on the hospital grounds at the time. So we also eliminated 1 extra boy because it was on the other side of Bridget's family. So I'd been searching through Mum's match list using all of the surnames in Bridget's family tree, and the surnames that were popping up were reflecting Bridget's maternal side. That was fine, so that was another one down. So we actually ended up with 2 suspects. They were brothers.
All right, and that is where we're stopping there.
How many parts to this one?
2. Just 2.
Good. Okay.
Just 2 to this one. Emily is a kindred spirit in that she will leave no stone unturned.
Wow.
And she will go to the lengths that I have been known to go.
That's to the ends of the earth.
Exactly. Literally. So even though there's no end, whatever. So that's the end of the first part. That's the first part. We will hear the end next week.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
In that case, if we're ending this,
we're ending it.
I am Richard Castle. And you can follow me on the Twitter. And you can also go to my website, richardcastle.com, which has nothing to do with genetic genealogy.
Or castles.
Or castles. It has to do with me as a musician and songwriter. But that's how you can find me outside of this podcast if you really want to stalk me.
By the way, Rich's Twitter is @CastleSongs.
Did I not say that?
You didn't say it, no. You just said you can find you on the Twitter.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, I really want you to search out. A true stalker would find me no matter what.
I wonder if you can. If you probably can.
I'm sure.
I'll do it.
But there's a lot of Richard Castles, because there was that TV show Castle, and his name was Richard Castle.
And there's an author named Richard Castle, because remember that time I was in the library and I saw somebody reading a book that had Richard Castle, and I took a picture and sent it to you.
I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but somebody reached out to me via email, and they thought I was him, and they said, could you please come to this and speak at this author event?
You should have said yes.
And they were going to pay for my flight and hotel. I wanted to just show up and wing it, but I'm too honest.
That's hilarious. I would have said yes.
And
Depends on where it was.
Who are you, Julie?
Oh, hey, everyone. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find me on the Twitter @JulesJackson.com. That's all one word with 2 O's in Jules. Find the podcast at Cutoff Jeans Pod. Come join the Facebook group. It's growing exponentially. Everybody is delightful. Somebody said the nicest thing the other day, and I regret not taking a screenshot of it because it disappears once you accept somebody. But because I asked people why they want to be in the group.
Yes.
And somebody said something like, your voice is like home.
Oh,
isn't that the sweetest thing?
That's sweet.
Thanks, whoever said that. I forgot. But that was really nice. So join the group. Tell me why you're there. And
it is like home. My home was always often shrill. but filled with laughter.
Shrill. You know, I'm not going to lie. I love being called shrill.
That and a swirling maelstrom of
Feminine shrill supremacy. Oh,
that's what my home was like. It actually kind of was like that.
Oh, no, your mother was much more calm sounding than me.
Yes.
She was very even keeled, at least when I met her.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Hey, guys, guess what?
What is it?
The truth is in your genes.
Ugh.